I'm very happy to have John Hightower, the CEO of Arch and Tower, with us today. This is going to be a really interesting conversation because I know John and his team have been really rolling their sleeves up, helping companies around the country think through the new normal and what's going on. But good morning, John. How are you?
I'm well, Bob. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the time this morning.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I know folks are going to be really interested in this conversation, and we're just so pleased to have you here. But first, can maybe introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Arch and Tower and what you do.
Well, thank you, Bob, for the time. And Arch and Tower is focused on a $75 billion issue. And the $75 billion issue is the customer experience. And that's a number that was brought forward by PwC. And it's interesting when you look at the detail behind this customer experience number, because it's a $75 billion annualized issue that most companies aren't thinking about the details behind it. And what I mean by that is when you look at your customer experience, how a company engages with their customers, and what's the digital aspect like, what's the physical aspect like, how people are engaging with your company is traditionally driven by the employees. So we focus on the employee experience and the interactions between the employees and customers. And it was interesting as we were building our business, we've done a lot of work with Chick-fil-A, as well as with the founder of the Ritz-Carlton, Flor Schulte, and people kept asking, what does Chick-fil-A do well? And what does the Ritz-Carlton do well? And I said, well, they take care of their customers, they take care of their employees, more importantly. And an interesting aspect I saw in both organizations was a culture of continuous improvement. So we had done various projects specifically helping organizations with their supply chains, and we packaged that work up into something we call operational excellence. So we focus on 3 areas of a business: the customer experience, the employee experience, and operational excellence. And if you look at the acronym, it's CEOX. And what we're able to do is come along the C-suite and help in each one of those sectors. The CEOs thinking about organizational strategy, the chief marketing officer and the customer experience, the chief people officer and the employee experience, and then COOs and their operational excellence. And a little bit behind the name, Arches span gaps and carry weight. We like to do that with our clients, and Towers elevate you to a strategic vantage point. So that's a bit of our brand story. And I'm excited to share some of those details with you all today as we walk through some of our questions and conversations, Bob.
Well, that's great, John. And, as you know, we work with a lot of private equity firms, and probably over the last couple of months, I've probably had 30 or 40 conversations with these firms, and some have very diverse portfolios of companies. Some are industry specific, and I could tell you the ones that have portfolios. When this thing happened, the pandemic, they went, rolled their sleeves up and really went into triage mode, and we're trying to help their companies think through, not only how to handle the immediate issues, but their business model in general. And they talked to us about winners and losers. Can you comment a little bit about the work you're doing to talk to companies right now as they're addressing their businesses during this time?
Absolutely. And I'd focus on the immediate. Right now, employees want to be heard and communicated with. So we've prepared COVID responses for organizations that are in that $500 million, so 500 million type of client size, with what are your employees concerned about? What are they thinking about? What are they not communicating to you that as a CEO or a leader of an organization that you should be listening to? So we work with the C-suite to identify some of those aspects with a survey and a data-driven approach. From there, we craft the messaging and walk alongside the CEOs to help them communicate with their employees. And this is an important aspect, because you need to shore up that employee base before really exploring other areas of the business to look at. It's interesting, Fast Company released a stat just a few weeks ago that 50% of employees will make an employer decision based on how COVID is responded to. And what that means for me as a leader, even in our business, is the all-stars that I have, 50% of them are going to really remember how I treat them during this time. And that's a war for talent issue, and really identifying that and securing the home front, if you will. The next point in what we're saying is, hey, let's take care of today, which is the employees, and then move into that tomorrow. Let's begin to think about, or continue to think about, what's the new normal. And how do we explore new market opportunities? There are market opportunities out there. You see some industries skyrocketing right now, specifically in some of the aspects of remote work and how they support people and individuals in the remote workforce. And really understanding how can we explore those? How do we look at external opportunities is an area to explore. And I would look at that immediately. But just as importantly is internal opportunities for improvement. This goes more to that operational excellence piece. What type of cross-functional items are organizations working on where you can say, hey, now is maybe a time we explore and innovate around how we're handling our internal processes, because they have a massive impact on employee and customer experiences. I can go into detail on some of those core competencies if you'd like, but those are some of the areas that we're helping think about. And we've developed kind of a 4-pillar approach, a framework to help each member of the C-suite kind of understand where they are on that path to what we call transformation, which is the 3rd phase. So respond today, really rethink tomorrow, and then what's transformation look like as we go into this new and I think opportunistic economy as we're beginning to see some softening on some of the travel requirements and the return to office policies that are coming forward.
Yeah, the people we talk to really this resonates because in every disruption there's an opportunity, and so I mean when you think about the private equity industry, is really on the front line of understanding the market trends, positioning companies to take advantage of those trends, and now it looks like these trends are just accelerated. That may have been like a 3-year trend, or now just happening all at once. It's interesting how you're the first group I've seen talking about the employee experience is a critical pillar to this, and the interplay between employee, customer, and operations. And your work with Chick-fil-A, I guess, is really known for that. I mean, maybe you can talk a little bit about, without divulging any confidences, the type of work they do, because I know they're well known and relying on what you've been doing for them, which I think is fantastic. Can you comment on that a little bit?
I will, and I have an appreciation for Chick-fil-A as a customer. So I'm going to tell it to you from the customer point of view. We have had an amazing opportunity to serve Chick-fil-A, and we will save that project work for the aspects of confidentiality. But as a customer, I will share experience with you. So when you go to a Chick-fil-A drive-thru, if you haven't seen it recently, it is almost like a Congo line. The way that they serve me and my family as we work through the drive-thru. And for me, that's an incredible sequence of employee experience and customer experience. So I come up to the drive-thru and I'm usually greeted with someone with an iPad or a device that is taking my order. And it's a very pleasant experience. They're taking my order as they walk down the path, and then they're handing off that customer, myself and my family, to the next person in line who's taking payment. And from the payment, it's right there at the service bay window, that drive-through window, where the order accuracy is amazing when you look at Chick-fil-A, even to the point of sauce count and things of that nature, the minor details that when you add them up make a big difference. And when I took a step back, I went to the drive-through twice on a Saturday. We love Chick-fil-A, and I was mesmerized by it. And I was talking to my wife about it. And I said, that starts in back of house in the prep area as they begin to line up. Hey, what are those frequent items I need to move forward to serve the client quickly? And what I really appreciate about it is it's bringing together the physical touch point and the digital touch point all at the same time. We can leverage the Chick-fil-A One app, which is how their mobile ordering for customers, and go and drive curbside. And they innovated extremely quickly. We've had the opportunity to serve them and helping understand some of those nuances, but my appreciation as a customer just speaks to businesses. How are you reformulating your physical and digital interactions? Think about a professional services firm. Our company is a professional services firm. Arch & Tower focuses on professional services. We have recalibrated the way that we deliver. We do a lot of whiteboarding and strategy sessions with clients. And I'm a whiteboarder at heart. I love the tactical nature of drawing things out on a whiteboard, but we've had to pivot. And if you looked at my home office, there's 4 screens. One of them is a digital whiteboard that we can facilitate conversations on across the country. And we've just led an organization through a customer experience summit, 2 days of solid meetings, bringing 14 department heads together to map out their customer experience. And now we've identified gaps that they can improve on. So those are some of the ways that I think Chick-fil-A is bringing some of the best in class together. Is they're not looking at what's the digital perspective, what's the physical perspective. They marry those together. And on the back end, the operations and the process and looking at all of that movement, to me, is fascinating. And it's been an honor to be a customer as well as a partner of Chick-fil-A's over time. So
I assume that methodology you're bringing to other companies as well, not necessarily how specific to Chick-fil-A, but the interplay between operations, employee, customer. Again, I think it's really interesting. I mean, I saw the work you did for our firm, doing employee surveys, understanding, our client experience, interacting with us, and then looking at the back office operations and how we optimize our remote workplace, digital transformation. I know is something that you look at with companies. Could you talk a little bit about, I don't know if you have a read on this yet, but what industries are maybe the most challenged right now, the ones you're being called in to look at? I know you and I've talked in the past about supply chain issues. Can you maybe go macro a little bit about what you're seeing in the total economy right now?
I believe there's some really interesting trends coming out, and hypothesizing is a fun activity, and then driving in to say, okay, what does this really mean? I believe that there's going to be an interesting perspective on supply chain. We talked about energy independence as a country for quite a while, and I believe supply chain independence is going to be an interesting topic for organizations to think about. And what I mean by that is, if you're heavily weighted in a certain part of the world for your materials or your manufacturing, now may be a time to explore what's it look like to nearshore or onshore some aspects of your delivery model. It could be a professional services firm. It could be a product company. An example is I was actually had a chance to travel yesterday, my first time getting back out on the road to work with a company in North Mississippi, and they were procuring products from Southeast Asia. And their product mix is 60% domestic sourcing and 40% international sourcing. So when you begin to think about what is the risk and how do you mitigate those over time? How do you look at your inventory numbers and saying, hey, were we light? Well, maybe we should have carried some more inventory, or vice versa. And how do you explore those? I believe that's going to be a topic. Digital transformation you touched on. And to me, I need to do a better job of communicating digital transformation more frequently, because it's second nature for certain aspects of the workforce, that's the expectation. And if you're leading an organization and maybe you're not a digital first org, these are the times to think about that. I shared a little bit about looking at the customer experience from a holistic view, but I would want to call that back out, because when you look at a holistic customer experience and improvements inside of that, you're actually going to save quite a bit of money. You're going to have an accelerated sales process. You're going to have more enriched marketing and persona-based communication with your customers. And quite frankly, when you think about on the employee side, you're going to have efficiency gains that, from my perspective, are the hidden opportunity through all of this. Is we've had an amazing run, and I'm very thankful for the American economy and how strong it has been over the past decade and a half. But home runs cover up errors. I played baseball growing up, and you can make a lot of errors if you have guys hitting bombs from home plate, because those home runs will cover them up. Yeah. Now's the time where the errors are being exposed, and that's okay. Let's just figure out those mistakes. Let's correct them. Let's look for operational efficiencies, and then we can move back into more of maybe the aggressive hitting as the economy comes back. But we're big into continuous improvement. I would highly recommend, if you're not looking at, hey, how can we improve our service flow? How can we improve our customer experience? Now's the time to do that. So there's just a couple of topics. I know that you and I have talked macro, but those are two that are on top of mind.
It's interesting because, as you know, we at FD and FD Fund Administration, we have a lot of we provide outsourced services. And what we've heard from a lot of organizations is that they're thinking about that because they were challenged in the remote workplace. And a lot of that had to do with security. Their ability to actually have a secure environment. They're working. You think about private equity firms are handling big institutional investors, and now all of a sudden, because of the pandemic, they had to spread out. They weren't used to it. They weren't getting a SOC report on their own organization. So some of them have turned to outsourced providers that are more geared toward that, right? More geared toward remote workplace. I feel that's going to be an ever increasing trend. I bet you feel the same way too.
I believe outsourcing certain components of back office will be an area to explore and leveraging that, especially if you have multiple holdings. How can we leverage maybe back office shared services, like you had noted, a SOC report or some of the other areas where the support can you can compound your returns by maybe thinking differently about the models. And I encourage people in the private equity space, when you're surveying your holdings, how do you explore maybe retooling some of those holdings, repositioning them during this time, or doubling down? I believe that there's going to be great value right now, and exploring those value opportunities and keeping ahead of ourselves on saying we're an American economy that have came through amazing challenges, and we're starting to see us come out on the backside of this. I mean, with just some of the macroeconomic pieces coming out, looking at the Dow and stuff like that, where we're starting to see a pulse go back into how do we open up businesses. And I do think there's going to be values for either acquisitions or reposition your portfolio.
Well, I think that as we start wrapping up, but I think that the interplay between employees, their experience, the customer experience, and the operations is a unique thing that you bring to the table. And I know mid-market companies, I mean, when this thing started happening, it was about cash. Are we going to be okay? And many of them are going for the PPP loans. Unfortunately, our private equity clients couldn't do that with their portfolio companies because of the rules. But I think it's really unique what you provide, because think about our company. Our employees are were freaked out to begin with. How are they going to re-enter the marketplace? How are we going to get back to the office? I just think that a lot of companies could really benefit from what your thought process and what you've brought to companies like Chick-fil-A, and how they should think about that interplay. I think it's very unique. So I really appreciate your time today. Do you have any other closing comments you want to say to the audience?
Well, I would say everything is going to continue to, from my perspective, history is a good predictor of the future, and America has fought through and came out stronger on the back end. I believe people that are wise and thoughtful about how their business is positioned, the different processes, the different opportunities for growth, I believe are ripe. And I do believe that ingenuity is going to win the day in this space. I would encourage anyone, if you have any questions or thoughts, they can connect with us at archandtower.com. We do have a 4-pillar framework that, Bob, maybe we can share with the audience, and I can get you those materials if it would be helpful as more of a guide path. And we're thankful, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on this conversation with you, Bob, and just appreciate your time as well.
Thanks for listening to one of Fraser and Dieter's branded podcasts. To learn more, connect with us on LinkedIn or visit us at fraserdieter.com, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode.